Hello and welcome to another episode of Back Nine Report. We want to wish our normal co-host Carlos Torres our deepest condolences this evening. He had a death in his family and cannot be with us tonight. In his place, we are pleased to welcome in the European golf guru, Kieran Clark. Wild applause, yay!
Well, thank you, Fred, for that glowing and such a sincere introduction there. You're so happy to have me with you tonight, and I'm happy to be here as well. Obviously, I wish it was under happier circumstances, and obviously my thoughts go to Carlos as well. We love him. We wish him so much. We have so much respect for Carlos, such a great host of this show, such a good friend to us for so many years, and we look forward to having him back in the show very, very soon. But yes, tonight I'm stepping in and trying to fill those very large shoes, Fred. And I guess we can say that it is December. The Christmas trees and the decorations, they are in place. Everything's brighter. And this is known as the season of goodwill to all men, even to you, Fred. So, and you know, it's rare, obviously, to have meaningful golf to discuss in December, but it's 2020, so you know that things are different, and they certainly are this year. So this week we have the DP World Tour Championship. Can Captain America himself, Patrick Reed, conquer Europe? And of course, we also have the US Women's Open, the final major of this very, very strange year. So Fred, there's a lot to get through tonight.
Yes, and even though we are very close to the end of the year, we got a lot of golf action happening. We got a major championship here in the United States. So, and the top golf stories from last weekend we're going to talk about: Victor Hovland won in Mexico, got his second win. Annika Sorenstam's taken a new job. We're going to talk about that. And as I mentioned, we have the final major of the year, the U.S. Women's Open, this week in Houston. So, as always, we have a ton of golf to talk about. And we've got the European golf guru with us to do it. So let's go. Let's get to it. So right away, we're going to move into the backspin, Kieran. And they played a little golf down in Mexico last weekend. As I mentioned, Victor Hovland birdied the final hole to win the final event of 2020. That's his second PGA Tour win on tour. Picked up 1.3 mil. That's a nice little Christmas bonus there. Moves to number 3 in the FedEx Cup rankings, so that's a good deal. Really a bunch leaderboard. This was really a birdie fest. The cut came at 1 under par. Hovland posted 4 scores in a 60, 67, 69, a really cool 63, then a 65 on Sunday to get the win. Got to 20 under to win by 1 shot. Aaron Wise posted his own 63 on Sunday to get close. Posted 19 under, gave Hovland a little something to shoot for, but Victor made that birdie on the 72nd hole and got the win. Adam Long and Tom Hoge tied for 3rd. Harris English had another good week, tied for 5th with Billy Horschel and Lucas Glover. Brendan Todd, Tony Finau, Emiliano Grillo, and Carlos Ortiz was the low Mexican, tied for 8th. Another native Mexican, Abraham Answer, was T12. Koepka and Ricky Fowler missed the cut. What is going on with these two guys? Fowler, they're going to be glad 2020 is over. They're ready to reset and refocus for 2021. Hovland and his buddies Morikawa and Matt Wolff are having quite a competition to see who's going to be the best of the group. Right now, Morikawa with the major win is slightly ahead, but these three are going to be fun to watch for a few years, Kieran. What's your any thoughts on the Mayakoba this week?
Yeah, obviously, as you said, Fred, it was a very exciting finish. You know, great tournament. You know, right down to the wire. And I think it was quite fitting that the final event of this year ended by the winner, who's someone who we think is going to make a lot of headlines next year. It's a nice crossover into 2021. And Victor Hovland, you mentioned obviously Matt Wolff and Colin Morikawa, who just 18 months ago or so, they were all still in college, and now a year and a half later, they're all 3 of them are in the world's top 15 in the official world golf rankings. So that's just an astonishing rise from the 3 of them. And obviously there's 6 PGA Tour wins in there between the 3 of them. And of course, Morikawa, as you said, Fred, has that PGA Championship he secured back in August. Wolff obviously had played very well in the majors too, and was right there with Bryson DeChambeau at the US Open. And Hovland, apparently, I read earlier, he has the tour. He actually holds a tour record now for the most consecutive rounds shot in the 60s. So 3 young guys who came onto the tour last year who have just excelled and surpassed all expectations. And Hovland obviously gone a little bit under the radar, and I think he's someone who's now shown that he really could be a star-making year next year. I think he is such an impressive player. Has a great attitude, very likable, enjoys the game, but he's a superb competitor. And I think if you look at the three of them, Matt Wolff with his wonderful technique is a little bit, he's very powerful, maybe a little bit inconsistent at times. Morikawa, I think, is one of the classiest looking golfers that we've seen in the past 15, 20 years emerging on the tour. And I think Hovland is probably closer to Morikawa in that respect in the way he plays. So I fully expect Hovland to go into next year and build on this. And all three of them are certainly top 10, top 5 players in the making. But I think Hovland's the guy who, obviously, the next step for him, Fred, will be contending in majors. That's what the other two have done. Morikawa obviously won a major, so Hovland's got that to shoot for. I think he is an absolute guarantee to be in Padraig Harrington's Ryder Cup team for Europe next year at Whistling Straits. So Hovland's a very impressive player. And they say the next step is, can he elevate his game and contend in these majors and perhaps pick up a victory early next year in the continental US? And I expect him to do so. And I think he's someone who is going to be a standout next year. But a great way for him to end what's been a memorable 2020, and he'll be feeling really good about himself going into next year. But I must quickly mention as well the guy that finished second, Fred, and that was Aaron Wise, who, go back a couple of years ago, he was talked about in similar terms as the big three have been. The big three have been now. He was a very impressive player when he first came on the tour. He won at the Byron Nelson, I think, but he just didn't build on that, and he struggled. He fell down well below the 200 in the world rankings. So this is a much needed return to form, and it suggests that better times are to come next year. Sometimes, in golf, it's not always going to go well. It's not always going to go swimmingly. Not always going to be how you want it to be. But sometimes those negative times, those disappointments can be when you learn a lot about yourself. But certainly, Fred, there haven't been many disappointments for Victor Hovland this year, and I expect even better things to come in 2021 for the Norwegian.
Yeah, he's a real star without question, along with Morikawa, along with Matt Wolff. They are three guys that I really enjoy watching play. Hey, we are down to the end of the year here, and we're going to have our big wrap-up show next week. You're going to be back to do the year in review. But this was the last official event of the PGA Tour season. It did return after a 3-month shutdown. We had winners. We were able to get 3 of the majors in. What kind of, do you have any thoughts about the year? Just real quick, just some real quick thoughts about 2020 and the PGA Tour.
Yeah, Fred, I do. Obviously, I think it was great that we still managed to have something resembling a season, given what happened in the middle of the year and the shutdown. And I think the Tour deserves a lot of credit for coming back and putting on some fantastic events all year. Obviously, we had the majors, had the FedEx Cup. Obviously, most of those events were played behind closed doors without spectators, which was a miss, I think, at times. Hopefully, we'll see that addressed in the months ahead. That'll be a huge boost to have the fans back in 21. Hopefully we'll get that. We get towards, I think, the springtime. I think the first couple of months of the year in California, we might struggle, but when we get towards the Florida swing, I think we might see some fans back there, hopefully. But yeah, the year. And also, Fred, it was a great variety of stories. We just talked about the young guys winning, Hovland, Wolff, Morikawa. But there was also some older guys that did really well too, particularly since the return in the summer. Adam Scott, he won at the beginning of the year at the Riviera, but then after the shutdown, actually the beginning of the new season, we had Sergio Garcia winning again. We had Martin Laird from Scotland winning again. We had Brian Gay winning in his late 40s, as did Stuart Sink, of course, winning after so long in the wilderness. So a great variety of stories, the young guys, the old guys. It just shows you. But in the majors, Fred, I think, obviously we had 3 majors this year. We missed out on the Open Championship. But the 3 majors we had, the winners, you couldn't have asked for anything better. When you look at it this way, we had the best player in the world winning the Masters. We had the biggest headline maker of the year in Bryson winning the US Open. And we had probably the best emerging talent in Morikawa winning the PGA. So you can't get much better than that. But I think the main story here, Fred, from this year, in terms of the PGA Tour, is Dustin Johnson, who I think now is in a position where we're starting to talk about him as being like a generational defining player, which maybe we hadn't before. He's won 4 times since June, obviously FedEx Cup, the Masters, world number 1. 24 victories in the PGA Tour now, Fred, and that's 14 that have come since he won the US Open 4 years ago. That's a huge, it's a fantastic ratio. So if you try and look into the future and try and get your crystal ball out and say, well, if he could do that in the next 4 years, before he turns 40, he's 36 now. So when he turns 40, if he wins 14 more times in the next 4 years, that'll be 38 wins on the tour. That would tie Gene Sarazen and be just one behind the great Tom Watson. So, Fred, Rory McIlroy was always seen as being clearly the player of his generation, which we can kind of say maybe for the argument here, those born in the 1980s. Rory born in 89, Dustin born in 84. I think Rory probably still is the player of his generation because of those 4 majors and because of his, kind of international popularity. But it's very close now. And I think that perception could easily change in the coming year or so if Dustin wins another 2 majors or even 3 majors or just even 1 next year. I think we could start talking about Dustin Johnson as being the best player of his era, and the way he played at Augusta, so comfortable, so accomplished. I think there's potentially some really great things to come from him in the next 2 or 3 years, and we could ultimately see Dustin Johnson become, record-wise, one of the truly great players, and certainly one of the best players, probably the best player in the post-Tiger era. So I think that's going to be the biggest story from this year going into next year, Fred, is can Dustin Johnson underline that status, and then perhaps could the likes of Rory and Brooks Koepka, who obviously had a poor year, can they bounce back? But I think longevity is important, Fred, and Dustin Johnson's had that so far, and obviously going ahead is a great goal to have, and that often defines the great players who can be successful for the longest. I saw someone make an interesting argument recently where they were trying to say that arguably Sam Snead is the best player of all time because he played the best for longest. And longevity has always been something in golf that's very important. Might change in the future with different, fitness and the way the game is going now with modern technology. But ending this year, Fred, we have a top 5 in the world of Dustin Johnson, Jon Rahm, Justin Thomas, Rory McIlroy, Bryson DeChambeau. Then you have the likes of Morikawa and Schauffele and Cantlay and Tyrrell Hatton not far behind. I think that makes for some very exciting times to come next year, Fred, and hopefully we'll have some crowds to cheer the players on next season.
Yeah, you make some really good points there. And it was amazing to me that they shut down for 3 months and then they're able to cobble together a schedule, put on a pretty good show really for the rest of the year. Although no fans, they were able to get 3 majors in. We only really lost the Players and the Open Championship this year to COVID. And so kudos to the PGA Tour and the players for doing what they needed to do. Everybody, the tournament directors and the people at all the towns, the volunteers, getting all this stuff done with the safety concerns, dealing with the COVID, all that stuff, really, really well done, really. I can't stress that enough. And you know what, Kieran? It's only about 120 days until the Masters again
I know.
in April.
Incredible.
Yeah. Hey, on the European Tour last week, they said, hey, let's play 2. Let's have a double header. And they played in Dubai. They played in South Africa. Tell us a little bit about what's going on the European Tour. Why are they playing 2 events?
Well, it's all happening apparently. You get 2 for the price of 1 in the European Tour. That's how confusing this year has been. But it was 2 good stories in the end, actually, Fred. And I think the standout one was obviously Christian Bezuidenhout winning back-to-back events in South Africa on home soil, and he won brilliantly by 5 shots there in his home open. He started with a 5-shot lead over Jamie Donaldson. That was cut back a little bit as he struggled a little bit on the front 9 at the Gary Player Country Club, but he rebounded on the back 9, played fantastically, shot 69, and he won by 5. And that's his 3rd European Tour sanctioned win of this season. He won in February on the European Challenge Tour, and of course he won just a week ago at the Alfred Dunhill Championship. And he is now one to watch, Fred, we'll talk about this later. He's one to watch at the DP World Tour Championship, as he could, in theory, become European Tour's #1 if results go his way in Dubai. He's a fantastic player, has a great, really fascinating life story, and it's been well documented the things he's had to overcome to get where he is, and he's now, achieving some great stuff. He's now 35th in the world, and he said after he won in South Africa, he said, "It's unbelievable to stand here with an open win. It's any South African golfer's dream to win a national tournament. It's unreal. I fought hard today. The front nine, things didn't really go my way, but I just dug deep to come out with a win today." And he certainly did. And I think there's more great things to come from the 26-year-old next year, Fred. And then elsewhere on Saturday. So the South African Open finished on Sunday, but the event they had in Dubai, the Golf in Dubai Championship, Fred, it finished on Saturday, just to confuse everybody even more. And that was Antoine Rosner, who overcame a 4-shot deficit to secure his first win on the European Tour. He was at 25 under par, and he shot 64 to win. He was behind Andy Sullivan, who was, in ahead all the way through the event. But a great run on the back nine, including an eagle on the 13th, took Rosner ahead at the Fire Course. And yeah, he birdied the last, and that secured the win. And he's a 14th first-time winner in this year's European Tour, Fred, and that's only his 24th appearance in a rookie year on the tour. So he's certainly a name to look out for. Rosner with some great French players in recent years, Victor Dubuisson, Mike Lorenzo Vieira, Alexander Levy, they were successful. But we'll be looking for the next one to step up. And Antoine Rosner, Fred, he might very well be the guy. So 2 events in the European Tour and 2 very intriguing winners that sets us up for the finale in Dubai that we'll talk about a little bit later.
Yeah, Carlos and I talked a little bit about the struggles of Bezuidenhout last week. He's gone through his life, handled all the things he's done, and still able to compete in golf at this level is simply amazing. So yeah, congratulations to him for sure. Let's talk a little bit about the LPGA. They were back in action last weekend. Angela Stanford, this lady just continues to amaze me. We would go years not hear anything from Angela Stanford. Then she'd be on the Solheim Cup team. And then she'd go away and just play her little game, get top 25s and, keep her card. She's been on tour since 2000. This was her 7th win last week at the Volunteers of America Championship. 20-year career. She was looking forward to being assistant captain for the Solheim Cup later in 2021 with Patty Hurst. She won a major. She won the Evian in 2018. So she's just had a solid career and earned about $12 million in prize money. That's a lot for in the women's game over a 20-year career. She credits her strong play lately to working with her coach on her short game. She had a chip-in eagle on number 17 in the 3rd round that set the table for her great round on Sunday. And after making bogeys in number 11 and 13 and a double bogey on 14, she played the last 20 holes in 6 under par. So she had it going on the weekend for sure. Cold and windy conditions all week made the going tough for the women. Missed greens made chipping and putting very important, of course. So Young Yu, NB Park, and Yealami Noah finished 2 back and a tie for runner-up. This was Rue's first event in the U.S., and she looks to be in good form heading to the U.S. Women's Open this coming week. Jin Young Ko was solo 5th. She keeps climbing. This is only her 2nd event back to the U.S. She keeps getting a little bit better. We're going to talk more about her later. Charlie Hall led the first round, went out fast, but then finished up with scores of 74, 68, 71, finished tied for 6th with Anna Nordquist. Lindsay Weaver, Kristen Gillum tied for 8th, and Magdalene Sadstrom rounded out the top 10. Missing the cut, Maria Fozzi and amateur Alexa Pano, who we have seen perform well in LPGA events before, but I think probably the wind and the cold were probably a bit much for her. She's going to have to get a little bit stronger as she gets a little bit older. Kieran, with the win, Stanford now moves up the money list and may want to be a member of the Solheim Cup team rather than the assistant captain.
Oh, absolutely. And I think you touched on it at the start there, Fred. You know, her career has been full of surprises and full of overcoming odds and rolling back the years and reminding you that she's still there. And this is another example of that. I mean, she's 43, which is, you know, you mentioned on the PGA Tour, the guys who won in their 40s, like Sink and Brian Gay this year. But on the LPGA Tour, you know, it's so skewed through the recent years towards young players. I mean, players when they get towards their mid-20s, they're seen as being veterans, which is incredible. So if that's the case, Angela Stanford is an extra veteran. I mean, she's the veteran of veterans, but a wonderfully solid career. You know, as you say, Solheim Cup player, and her success in majors obviously came at a later time when she won it at the age of 40 at the Evian 2 years ago. And that was seemingly was the completion of her career, that journey she'd been on from, as you say, going back to the turn of the millennium. And she perhaps became quite satisfied with that, but she grew, as she said it herself, she grew tired of playing bad golf. So she rededicated herself, worked in the short game, came out refreshed, and she's rolled back the years once again. You know, you're going back 17 years to when she claimed her first win on the LPGA Tour. And that same year, actually the week after she won that event, she came agonizingly close to winning the US Women's Open that year. And she lost in an 18-hole playoff by just one shot. So, could she contend? She's a Texan. Could she contend in Texas this week coming up at the US Open? We'll have to wait and see. But she's resilient, determined, a fierce competitor. As I say, after this, could she win the US Open in her home state? You just never know.
That wraps up the backspin segment for this week. So let's move on to the forecall, where we talk about the upcoming tournaments. Only really two big events in golf this week. Well, we got to throw in one more. There's kind of a funky event too. Being only 17 days to Christmas, most years major championship golf is over. The clubs are in the garage and the pros are at home resting, but not 2020. It's a different year, folks. We got the U.S. Women's Open in Texas, which we're going to discuss in detail in the practice range in a minute. But first, Kieran, tell us about the European Tour and the DP World Championship, what wraps up that year. And you got the big purse there. You got all the top players, right?
Yeah, very much so. And we mentioned, obviously, the PGA Tour somehow coming together and putting together a really strong schedule in the summer for the rest of the year. Due to COVID, it was an even harder situation for the European Tour. Obviously, they play all across the world. It's international schedule. And they were somehow able to cobble together a schedule. They had, obviously, those two sequences of events, the UK swings that they had in Britain in the summer and then in the early fall. And that was kind of the foundation of this kind of rearranged schedule. Obviously, had events in South Africa, some new tournaments appeared elsewhere. But it's all led to this point, Fred, which is the DP World Tour Championship, which is the finale, where we'll see the Race to Dubai champion crowned. And it could be really, really interesting this week, Fred. I mean, as I mentioned earlier at the start of the show, Captain America, Patrick Reed, he leads the Race to Dubai, and he has done from the very beginning of the year. There are some oddities on paper on this. You think, well, Patrick Reed, he doesn't play the European Tour, does he? Well, he does occasionally. He is a member. And the World Golf Championships and the majors obviously do count on the European Tour. The money you earn there, big money, of course, that counts towards points. So if you play well in those big events, you will rocket up the table and you'll be in contention to win the European #1 award without actually playing on the tour regularly. That's obviously been even more stark this year when there was fewer events elsewhere. And in the events that they did put on in Britain in summer had lower prize funds than normal European Tour events. So Reed is at #1 right now. He's in pole position. And this has been a long-standing goal of his, Fred. 2 years ago, he finished second in the Race to Dubai behind Francesco Molinari. It's been a goal for him to become the first American player to become European #1. And it's a very real possibility, but he can't just turn up and hope for the best. He has to go out there and win, because the way the system works, at the moment as it stands, the top 4 players, Fred, on the Race to Dubai standings.
We should clarify, Kieran. I gotta jump in here.
Yes.
So officially, that is true. Yes. No American has won, but Tiger would have won it like 5 times.
But he
never accepted European Tour membership.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get that in there. I'm sorry.
But of course, Fred, but it's a really good thing that Tiger didn't take up membership, because that allowed Colin Montgomerie to win the Order of Merit every single year.
8 times, exactly, yeah.
8 times, exactly. So Colin Montgomerie is very grateful that Tiger didn't take up European Tour membership. But Patrick Reed did. And the way it stands, Fred, so the top 4 players, if they win in Dubai this week, they are guaranteed to win the overall prize and be number 1. It's a little bit like the FedEx Cup playoffs here, but without the daft and silly scoring system. So you have Patrick Reed, Tommy Fleetwood, Colin Morikawa, and more on him in a minute, and Lee Westwood. So any of those 4 players, if they win the event, they will win everything, all. It will be theirs. All the money, all the accolade, all the achievements. So those are the 4 players to watch. But there's a second group of players, Fred, who could also win quite realistically. So just talking about him, Christian Bezuidenhout. If he wins here, if Victor Perez was to win this, if Aaron Rai was to win, or Tyrrell Hatton was to win the DP World Tour Championship, they would also claim the overall prize, but only if Patrick Reed doesn't finish in second on his own. So you have basically 8 players here who have a great chance to win, and that makes for great TV. It should be quite exciting, and all 8 of these players, you would expect them to be in contention at some point over the weekend. So delving into the contenders more closely, Fred. So obviously Patrick Reed, he's the favourite. It's in his hands. But it's also in the hands of Tommy Fleetwood. He became European number 1 back in 2017. He appears to be in contention every single year, but it hasn't been a great season for Tommy compared to previous ones. But if he could win this, end it on a high. So Colin Morikawa, this is the interesting one, Fred, where Colin Morikawa could win the race to Dubai and become European Tour number 1 without playing in continental Europe, or indeed in a regular European Tour event. He has affiliate membership. He had obviously won the PGA Championship, played well in WGCs, and that put him in this position, but he hasn't played a regular tournament on the European Tour until this week. He's one of 20 players making the debut in Dubai. Again, of course, he could also become that first American player to win the race to Dubai. So Morikawa, could end his year in very lucrative fashion. So he was, elsewhere, as I mentioned, we have Lee Westwood. He's another story as well, Fred, where he's going for his 3rd European number 1 position. The first came back in the year 2000. So that'd be remarkable longevity. And of course, there is history to this. The race to Dubai is what they call now the Order of Merit. So, but it has a long-standing history. It goes back to 1937, where they hand out the Harry Vardon Trophy, named after the great 6-time Open champion. And he died that year, and in his honour, they made the Harry Vardon Trophy, which they awarded to the best player. Back then, it was in Britain, but then it became in Europe, and everyone since then has received that trophy if they've become the number 1 player in that season. So if Westwood was to win this week, that would tie him on 3 Harry Vardon trophies, alongside Rory McIlroy, Sandy Lyle, Bernard Hunt, and the great Bobby Locke. So not bad company to keep there. So, and Fred, you mentioned the prize fund. The prize fund in total this week will be $8 million. The winner will take home $3 million of that. And crucially, the 2,000 Race to Dubai points, which ultimately will determine who becomes European Tour's number 1. So, Fred, we have 8 players here, some fascinating names there, who all have a really strong chance to become European Tour number 1. So who's going to hunt down Captain America? I'll have to wait and see. But I'm looking forward to this. I think I expect at least 2 or 3 of these guys to be right there come Sunday. And ultimately, the one who wins it all. So it should be good TV.
I'll tell you what, watch the European Tour in the morning, the U.S. Women's Open in the afternoon, try to slip in a little bit of football. I see a lot of TV watching in my future for this weekend.
Your weekend is sorted and planned.
I got it down. Hey, we have one more event to talk about, just real briefly. Greg Norman's old Shark Shootout, now the QBE Shark Shootout, will be held this weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, down in Naples. 24 players teamed up into 2-man teams, compete in scramble on the first day, modified stable for the second, and then 4-ball on Sunday. The scoring's always low with birdies and eagles everywhere. You can find it on Golf Channel all 3 days, 11 to 3 on Friday, 1 to 5 on Saturday, and Sunday's final round. Now, this gets a little tricky, gets broken up 12 to 2 on NBC and then 2 to 4 back on the Golf Channel. So you gotta kind of look at gotta figure things out there. You got Bubba is teamed up with Louis Oosthuizen, and Matt Wolff is with Abraham Ancer, Brendan Todd, Billy Horschel. Stricker is going to play. He's with Daniel Berger, the Aussie team of Cameron Smith and Mark Leishman. You got young guys, Joaquin Newman and Sebastian Munoz together. You got Kuchar and English. You got long hitters, Tony Finau with Cameron Champ. You got Lanto Griffin with Mackenzie Hughes, Kevin Na with Sean O'Hare, Ryan Palmer and Varner together. And last year's champions, Rory Sabatini and Kevin Tway, are also teaming up again. So always kind of a fun little event down in Naples, and it's going to be on this weekend too. Kieran, any thoughts on that?
Well, as you said earlier, Fred, there's a lot of golf to watch this weekend, from the DP World Tour Championship.
I don't think you're going to be spending a lot of time watching the QBE.
I think the QBE might fall third on my list of priorities. So put it this way, Fred, the QBE is the third biggest event in golf this weekend. That's not bad.
There you go. Just a word from Boyne. It's cold. The 10 golf courses at Boyne are covered in snow right now, but that doesn't mean you can't get some hot deals on 2021 golf packages from Michigan's best golf resort. They currently have 4 options for guests to book for 2021 trips right now. Stay and play for golfers that just need 18 holes a day. Unlimited golf for golfaholics that want to play from sunup to sundown. The Champions Package for players that want to play the ultimate test, play the best courses. The Great Escape offers 5 full days of golf and excitement. Check out which is right for your group and get it booked at 2020 prices. Visit boyne.com/golf. That's Boyne, BOYNE.com/golf today. That brings us into the Par 5 news, Kieran. And, we got a lot of news to talk about. There's some really good stuff here. We got all kinds of Annika Sorenstam news. She's actually headlining the news this week. First, it was announced that she was named the new president of the International Golf Foundation. She would be replacing Peter Dawson at the 1st of January. Then earlier today, the news broke that she would also play in the LPGA's Diamond Resorts Tournament of Champions in January. So during a meeting of the virtual meeting of the board, of the IGF board, which focused on long-term strategic planning and progress toward next summer's Tokyo Olympics, the IGF formally named Annika as a new president. Peter Dawson, had been serving that capacity for 10 years. Of course, he was the chief executive of the R&A for 15 years. He left that post in 2015. He stayed on at the IGF. But he informed the board he would not seek reappointment when this current term was up here at the end of the year. So then that necessitated finding someone new. So what does the IGF do? Well, their mission is to promote golf as an Olympic and Paralympic sport. They encourage the international development of golf. They administer the statutes, practice, and activities of golf as a recognized international federation. And they organize the golf competitions of the Olympic Games, Youth Olympic Games, and the World Amateur Team Championship. So they got a lot of stuff going on. And it was founded in 1958 with 35 countries getting together in Washington, D.C. And that was brought about because of the fact that the USGA here in America was just getting bombarded with requests to have tournaments all around the world. They said, hey, we can't handle this. The R&A said they can't handle it. So they formed this International Golf Federation to take care of golf around the whole world. And so that is now, they took the lead in promoting golf and getting it into the Olympics back in 2016. And so now they administer all that. And so one more quick thing about Annika before I turn it over to you. So Diamond Resorts opens up this season every year now for the LPGA in Florida down in Naples. And they have like a celebrity pro-am, kind of like the Bing Crosby or the AT&T National Pro-Am at Pebble Beach on the PGA Tour. And so you have a pro that's teamed with a with an amateur or a celebrity. And in this case, Annika is going to be playing in the celebrity portion. She's not going to be playing with the young girls. She's going to be in the celebrity portion. And she's not going to be competing against young women that dominate the game. But Kieran, I would wager that her scores would be good enough to make the cut, and she'll probably outperform about half of the young ladies in the regular LPGA division of the Pro-Am. And she should definitely win the celebrity division unless a sandbagger completely goes crazy and beats his handicap by a bunch.
Well, I would think so. And obviously, it's been 13 years since Annika played competitive golf. She retired back in 2007-8. And obviously, one of the best players ever, arguably the best female golfer of all time.
She still leads the career money list title, hasn't played for 13 years, and she still leads the LPGA career money list title.
It's incredible. And you can take it for granted just how good she was at that time and how dominant she was. The number of events that she won was astonishing on the LPGA Tour and the LET, and obviously all the majors and the Solheim Cups, and just and I'm pretty sure she can still play to a very high level, despite obviously being now at 50 years old. So yeah, if you have a chance to watch Annika play golf, it'll be fun to do so. And she's obviously had a great second life now with the Annika Foundation, and obviously with her family and all that comes with that. She was Solheim Cup captain a few years ago as well. And obviously now in this new kind of office role, if you like, in a suit for the International Golf Federation. And we spoke, Fred, 2 weeks ago on the show regarding women and female representation in golf and how important it was to have women in more powerful positions in golf. And this is quite timely, therefore, that this has actually happened. While there are obviously bigger and more influential organisations in the game than the IGF, I think having Annika there is a very good thing. And as you touched on, Fred, it's because of the IGF that golf get back in the Olympic Games. Peter Dawson was a big proponent of that, and I think it was very successful in Rio 4 years ago. And obviously looking ahead to Tokyo next year, and we'll see if they can build on that success and making golf a fun part of the games next year. So actually, I did see incidentally that they've admitted a new sport into the Olympic Games for the future, which is break dancing. So golf's in some very good company there with break dancing. So we'll see how that plays out.
You're kidding me with that, right? That is serious?
That is 100% serious, yes.
Oh my God. You got to do that, right?
Well, you did it. I'm not going to do it. So I think a gold medal for you right there.
All right, yeah.
So
yeah. Moving right along.
Moving swiftly on, yes. Good for Annika, though. Well done.
You talked about Rory earlier, and it seems that Rory got his feathers ruffled just a bit, and had to comment against some comments that Tom Weiskopf made, who actually came out of Ohio State. Kieran, I don't know if you knew that.
Yes.
Ohio State followed in the footsteps of Jack Nicklaus. Never really happened for Weiskopf, though, like everyone predicted. He was one of these can't-miss guys. Nobody had more talent than Tom Weiskopf. Nobody. No one ever. He should have won 10 majors. He should have won 50 tournaments. But he admitted in an interview last week that he didn't really have the desire to be the best. Tom liked to drink a little bit, actually more than a little bit, and so he had some issues with alcohol over the years. And Tom said, I really didn't have the passion or the effort that I wanted to put into it, and everyone kept pushing me to put into it. Golf was more of a means to an end for me. It was a way to give my family the best possible life they could have. Got just a real quick story I got to tell you. So when Tom was at Ohio State, my dad had asthma real bad, and he had to go to Columbus, which was an hour drive from where we lived, about once a month to a doctor there. And there was one restaurant that he really liked, and he always, when we went with him as a family, we would go to this restaurant. And more times than not, it was a very fancy restaurant, really nice. More times than not, Weiskopf's mother would wait on us. And they were from Cleveland area, but when Tom went to college, she relocated to Columbus so she could keep an eye on Tom because he needed someone there. He needed a support system. He was that shy and that awkward. And so she took a waitress job at this restaurant so she could be there while Tom was in college. Just a little quick tidbit there. So Tom continue on with this quote. I look at Rory McIlroy and I think golf is something just for Rory to do. I've said it for a while now that I don't think he will win much more than 4 majors. He's got maybe 5 because I don't see that determination and will to be the best. I think it is there in Dustin Johnson. Well, that's kind of a slam against Rory, who with 18 PGA Tour wins, 14 Euro Tour wins, and 4 major titles, totally encompasses Weiskopf's career of 16 PGA Tour wins, 2 European Tour, and 1 major, although he was a runner-up 4 times at the Masters. Tom, like I say, had the most talent of anyone, but he just didn't have that deep desire to win. So Rory answered back, I've never met Tom Weiskopf in my life. He's never met me. So obviously he's making a statement based on what he sees from the outside. I don't think that's a fair assessment. I've shown throughout my career that I care, that I want to win, that I want to be the best. And I've been the best. It's not as if I'm out there in the clouds and not thinking about it. I try my heart out every single shot, every single tournament I play. I maybe deal with disappointment better than I used to. I saw the interview, what he says about no frustration. Evidently, he didn't see me breaking clubs at the Zozo. You know, you made a point back when you were talking about Dustin Johnson that Rory was kind of the man, but now Dustin is kind of taking that over. You know, we kind of are waiting for Rory to break back out and have that good 4 or 5 year run like we still expect him to do. Do you think that Dustin kind of jumping over him will give him, and then, you know, Brooks Koepka did that too, that Jordan Spieth did that, Justin Thomas has done it. Do you think that's going to motivate Rory to kind of get back in there and be that guy again?
I think so, yes, I do. And I think if you look at Rory's career, he has often went through these cycles of great golf for 2 years and he falls away for a year and then he bounces back. I mean, that happened early on in his career. I remember when he first won, when he won the US Open in 2011. Of course, he then changed equipment manufacturer. He fell away and struggled in 2013. And he bounced back in 2014 by winning 2 majors. So he has had that up and down career. And of course, even a couple of years ago, he bounced back. And really, before the shutdown in the spring, Rory was the best player in the world, had played the most consistent golf for a year and a half and was in top tens every week, just about. He hadn't won a major again, disappointing, of course, but week in, week out, he was playing some of the best golf that he ever has. I think 2019, stats-wise, it was the best year of his career in terms of the performance stats. So yeah, Rory goes through these little ups and downs. It's been a very strange year, obviously, for everybody. He's had some changes this year, obviously, you know, a baby in the family now, so he's got that to kind of handle too. So all good stuff, but it's a distraction. It's something that's a change. And these guys, you know, have very set routines, and when something comes in, disrupts that slightly, then it can take a while to handle. Rory also spoke of this year of maybe struggling with the lack of crowds, not feeling that same intensity at tournaments that maybe you would do when you go there and you see the atmosphere and you can see the infrastructure, and it really sets you up for the week. Yeah, I expect Rory McIlroy to have a great year next year. He's, you know, capable of anything, and I expect him to come back and play really well. But I think that Dustin Johnson, Rory McIlroy dynamic could be very interesting going ahead into next year and beyond. But it's funny, Fred. I mean, obviously with Tom Weiskopf here, it's you Ohio boys causing trouble as usual. I mean, what are you all like? You're all the same.
You can't trust those Buckeyes.
You can't trust the Buckeyes whatsoever. But, you know, as you say, Weiskopf was of unbelievable talent. He was going to be the successor to Jack Nicklaus. Still had a good career by any means, but obviously not the great career that it could and should have been. But he was someone who, obviously, you mentioned some of the issues he had with alcohol, but he also quite enjoyed. He had many hobbies. He loved to go and shoot and hunt and fish, you know, all those American things. He loved all that. So he even missed a Ryder Cup one year so he could go and, I think it was to go hunting. So he loved stuff away from the game. And I do find him a very interesting player, a figure at Weiskopf. I think he's someone who you don't hear from him very much these days in interviews and so on, but he is a very interesting figure when he does speak, and he's very candid and very honest. And I think it's always a good read. So I would encourage people to go and look for that interview, which was in Golf Week with Weiskopf. But with Rory, it's like, why is he commenting on this? I mean, who cares? Why nobody? This is a thing. Rory's so open. He likes to talk and he likes to share his opinion, but most players wouldn't even address this. But Rory, one little bit of criticism, and he always likes to go out and respond to it. But I loved your story on Weiskopf, and I've got a little story about Weiskopf as well, where back in the 1990s, when he designed Loch Lomond in the west of Scotland, a magnificent golf course, he visited the island of Bute, which is where I spent part of my childhood and where I started playing the game. And the 9-hole golf course on the island there at that time was basically just farmland. Cows and sheep, they actually lived on the golf course, but it was in the most wonderful setting, right on the coastline, looking across the rocks and the hills, and it's the most magnificent setting for a golf course. And Weiskopf came for a visit, and he walked down this really shabby 9-hole course that had fences around the greens to stop the sheep getting on, and it was really in terrible condition. But he walked the golf course, and he said that it would be a magnificent setting for a proper championship links course. And that was 25, 26 years ago. Unfortunately, it's not reached that standard. The Bute Golf Club, it's actually, to be fair, the animals no longer live in the golf course. It's in much better condition now. It's still a wonderful place to go and play, but it's not a championship links. But Tom Weiskopf went in there. He walked those fairways, and he was rather impressed by the setting, which I've got to say, to me to this day, I've been to a lot of wonderful golf courses, obviously, but the old Bute Golf Club, 9 holes, short, only 5,000 yards, going around twice, but it's the most wonderful setting, and I enjoyed it, and even Tom Weiskopf, he loved it too.
Yeah, that's very cool. You talk about Tom liking to hunt and fish, and so he did Double Eagle, which is down by Delaware, Ohio, just north of Columbus. In a very private golf club. It has a lot of international and out-of-state members, a lot of corporate kind of thing. Probably only about 250, 300 members maybe. Beautiful place, absolutely beautiful. And it's broken down into like 6, 6, and 6. And there's fishing rods on every golf cart. And so some of the guys will go out and maybe play a few holes and just go fish for a while, and then maybe play a few more holes and maybe go fish some more. So he tied it all together at that golf club, and it's kind of a special place down there. Kieran, the next subject here tonight, we lost the great man, and I know you're going to tell us a little bit about Peter Alliss.
I am indeed, Fred, and it was very sad news on Sunday morning to wake up and hear that Peter Alliss, who was known as the voice of golf over in the British Isles, he had died at the age of 89. And it was literally just a month ago that he was actually commentating on the Masters for the BBC highlights from his home, indeed. He was there doing it over the internet, much like what we're doing right now. He was doing the broadcast there. And I have to say, at the time, he did look and sound rather frail. His voice, which obviously was so vibrant and so full of life and very strong, it was sounding very weak. He didn't speak with the same authority that even he had done until recent years. And he had been hospitalized just a few months ago due to ill health. But his death was nonetheless described as being unexpected but peaceful. But you look at Peter Alliss, and it's a remarkable life in golf. I mean, it is a golfer's life in every aspect. And as a player, as an announcer. And people do forget the magnificent playing career that Peter Alliss had. He was born in Berlin, Germany, indeed, back in 1931, to Percy Alliss, who was a leading golf professional of his time. And of course, back then, Fred, as you know, the golf pros of that era, even the guys that played in the tournaments, most of them were still club pros. They did lessons, they ran the shop, and Percy Alliss was a golf professional working in Berlin at the time, and Peter was born there. And he was reputedly the heaviest baby born in Europe at that time. He weighed 14 pounds and 11 ounces, which comes out at 6.7 kilograms at birth.
We give you information that you cannot get anywhere else. We have got it right here in the back.
I think he quite enjoyed telling that story through the years. And he did memorably say that afterwards his mother couldn't ride a bike for a month, but that's another story altogether. But he was a very large baby. But after a year, they moved back to England, and he grew up, Peter Alice did, around his golf and his father's famous friends, the likes of Reg Whitcomb and Dick Purton and Henry Cotton, all of them Open champions of the 1930s. He grew up around those guys. He left school very young without education, really, but he embarked on a wonderful playing career, winning dozens of titles all across Europe. And in the UK, he played in 24 Open Championships, 8 Ryder Cups, and 10 World Cups. Had a very good Ryder Cup record. He was unbeaten against Arnold Palmer in singles play. Played him twice. He had 5 top 10s in the Open. But he later struggled with his putting, and he kind of drifted away from the game by the time he was in his 40s. But of course, a wonderful golfer. But it was a broadcaster. He became so well known and so loved and respected. He was just 30 years old when he was asked to commentate on the Open at Royal Birkdale in 1961. It was won by Arnold Palmer. Alice, he finished 8th actually that week, and he was doubling up as a player and as an announcer. And that began a 60-year career on British, American, Australian TV, Canadian TV. He was in all the, he worked for ABC in America for a long time, BBC in the UK. He worked elsewhere too. He was a constant presence. And he also transcended the game. He went beyond that. He had television shows that were pro celebrity golf, and Around with Alice. They were hugely popular in the UK in the 70s and 80s. So he became a celebrity beyond the game of golf. So he was remained working up to really the end of his life, and was hugely popular for the way he described things. No one could imitate him. It's so humorous, so colourful, so just a wonderful gift with words and phrases, and timeless. And he's transcended generations, known all the greats, commentated on all the greats, been part of so many great moments through the years. He also, wrote golf books. He was involved heavily in golf course architecture. He worked with Dave Thomas and later Clive Clark, and they designed around 72 golf courses together, including the Belfry, which hosted 4 Ryder Cups. Some wonderful golf courses around the British Isles and beyond. So a great legacy in the game. He was inducted into the World Golf Hall of Fame in 2012, and people were sharing the speech that he gave that night.
It was wonderful. That was one of the best. I watched that live that night. It was one of the best ever.
Yeah, well, it really encapsulates everything that he was about. I mean, he had that wonderful Englishness, I think you can see, where he was so dry and so funny and so charming and engaging and just captivating to listen to. I mean, he's one of the most entertaining people naturally, who wasn't a professional comedian. I mean, he's had that great performer's sense to him, and he could hold an audience, even at that point when he was 81 years old. Such a vibrant, fresh mind. So yeah, fascinating guy, captivating, wonderful life, great legacy. And yes, through the years, his commentary as we became more modern wasn't necessarily very PC, politically correct. He was certainly old-fashioned. He was certainly a product of his era, that kind of interwar period in England. He was very much of that vintage and didn't really progress from that. So kind of the good parts and the bad parts of that were all there. But he was a fascinating guy. And I had the chance of meeting him briefly, Fred, around 10 years ago. So Peter Alice, he started to do these one-man shows. So he went around the UK and played the theatres, played to packed houses. And he came to the theatre in the town where I grew up in Perth. He came to the Perth concert hall, and he held a show there. And it was a bit like watching the Hall of Fame speech, but over 90 minutes. And he did a Q&A, and it was a great, held the audience in the palm of his hand. And afterwards he was doing signings and photographs and whatever. So I went up in the line, and I was the last person on the line. Got there, and he signed an autograph for me. I chatted to him about a golf course he designed not far from where I grew up, at Blair Gowrie, and a club he loved and respected. And then we got a picture taken together, and I showed him the picture afterwards on the camera, one of the old-fashioned cameras that actually had the picture appeared in the back. And I showed him the picture, and he said, "Two handsome gentlemen." So, and then we shook hands, and then we parted. So I met Peter Alice for about a minute and a half, 2 minutes, but it was memorable. Unfortunately, I've lost that photograph, which is really disappointing. but I did meet him once. I saw him not that long ago, so 2 years ago at the Open Championship at Carnoustie. I was there with some colleagues. It was a Wednesday practice day, and it was around middle of the afternoon, and we saw this large figure. He's a very bear of a man, trudging along towards the gin bar, and it was Peter Alliss and his wife. He had a walking stick, and he was sitting there in the middle of the afternoon having a nice gin and tonic. Very quintessentially English, and it just encapsulated what he was all about. So, great man, legend of the game, wonderful golfer, amazing broadcaster, someone who will never really be surpassed in what he achieved. And I think when you see all the tributes that you saw from all across the game and beyond at the weekend there, you saw how beloved he really was. So, Peter Alliss, it was certainly a life very well lived and very well played.
Yeah, and you touched on it there, but because of his stature and his history, long history in the game, he could get away with some things
Oh,
that
yes.
announcers could not get away with today, saying some of the stuff on air. They have to be very careful with every word they say. I don't envy them one bit. But Peter could get away with some of that stuff just because of his reputation and doing it so long.
Yeah, very much so, and also it's because he was so charming with it. As he said some things that were, and really nobody was immune from his eye. I mean, sometimes he kind of described his role as really painting pictures, and as far as he was concerned, the golf really spoke for itself. He enjoyed talking about the people he saw in the crowd. He loved, poking fun at people and commenting how they were dressed and what they were doing. He loved the absurdities of it all, and he had a great observational eye for a joke and for story. And he loved to relay things back to different things he'd done in the past and people he knew and all this stuff. And it was very unique. And it was someone, he really offered the perspective of someone who had lived through the game, through so many generations of the game, and was so close to it for so long. I mean, really going from the 1930s until the present day, and he remained connected to it. He knew a lot about it, and was, even though some people might have criticised him for perhaps being a little bit out of touch with the modern game, he still understood the fundamentals, and I think he actually always had an ability, even to the end, to cut through some of the BS that comes with golf at times. He was able to get to the fundamentals and avoid the cliches, and that's a very rare gift for any broadcaster, and he certainly had it. So he was one of the very best around. I say it's a shame. It'll be a great loss because, I mean, certainly for viewers in the UK, he's been part of golf broadcasting and TV for 60 years, and it'll be strange to have a Masters next year or an Open Championship or a Ryder Cup, and he's not at least a little bit of a part of it. So it's sad, but obviously a great life. And he was married twice, and he had 6 children, and he did a lot. And he knew everybody. He actually coached. He introduced Sean Connery, who of course recently passed away as well, to golf. He gave him lessons before they filmed Goldfinger, the James Bond film, and that began Sean Connery's, at that point, lifelong love for the game. So Peter Alliss was a friend of everybody. He just had that way about him. He was just one of those rare people who lit up a room, and when you were in his company, even briefly, he left a strong impression on you. He's one of those people who you'd walk into a place and you'd know he was there. He had that charisma and that charm and that indeed cheekiness as well at times. So it made it all good fun. And in the end, he always understood, I think, that ultimately golf is just a game. So it shouldn't be taken too seriously. He loved it, but he wasn't afraid of making jokes now and again. And I think that's a refreshing thing. So certainly there'll never ever, Fred, be anyone else like Peter Alliss. And I was glad to have that chance to meet him 10 years ago. And he will certainly be sadly missed.
Moving on, we've got another caddy is going to drop the bag and head over to the Golf Channel, do some announcing. John Wood has decided to stop carrying the golf bag. He's going to talk into a microphone. He's going to join Bones and Mark Emmelman, who traded in their golf bags for a backpack and a mic. He's looped for Matt Kuchar, Hunter Mahan, Mark Calcavacchia, and will begin as an on-course reporter for Golf Channel and NBC beginning at the 2021 Century Tournament of Champions right after the first of the year. I would be more excited to be joining the incredible team at Golf Channel and NBC. They've set the standard in golf coverage, and I hope to bring an interesting perspective to their incredible production. Wood worked as an on-course reporter in the 2015 RSM Classic. He has caddied in the Ryder Cup, for the President's Cups, was on the bag for Kuchar's bronze medal winning performance in the 2016 Olympics. He left Kuchar this last summer, had been working with Cameron Champ of late. Kieran, we just had a story about excellent player Peter Allis, who was the first to leave as a player and become an outstanding announcer. Now it seems the best way to get a TV gig is being a caddy.
Well, apparently so, and I don't think that is a bad thing, because I think the caddies, ultimately, as we all know, they are the most analytical people in terms of shot selection and understanding how a golf course is playing and the conditions. So they are ideally suited for being an on-course reporter, because in the end, that's what they do for a living. They are reporting what's happening on the golf course to their player. So if they can speak and they can do it entertainingly, then I think they can add an awful lot to the coverage. And I think it's actually important for, I think it helps golf coverage and actually all sports coverage to have a variety of different voices talking. You shouldn't have just ex-players or just professional announcers. I think a mix of all those guys having a top ex-pro and a top announcer holding it together, but then also have people like caddies and even journalists, people who can offer a different perspective, and you combine that piece, and I think that would enhance broadcasting, because sometimes ex-players are a little bit afraid to criticize what they're seeing, and I think the caddies offer a unique perspective. I don't know much about John Wood in terms of how interesting he is to listen to and talk to, but clearly NBC, they think they have something there, and I think Bones has been a very good addition to the golf coverage in recent years, and if John Wood's anything like that, then I'm sure he will certainly enhance it. So yeah, I think having the caddies there adds a different dimension, and one that does actually enhance the broadcast.
I'll tell you, Mark Emmelman is like my favorite commentator. Whenever he's doing I want to listen to him. He is really good when he's on the course, walking with a group. I mean, he can analyze the shot, analyze the setup. He really does an excellent job. Trevor is okay, but Mark is really, really good because of his years of being a caddy. So, moving on, we got another Woods here. That was John Wood. This is Tiger Woods.
Who's that? Who's Tiger Woods?
You've heard of him, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
You guys wears the red shirt on Sunday.
Oh yes, hell yeah, I know that is. Yeah.
He is in the PNC, and I know this is one of your favorite events of the year, the father-child event. And he's going to be playing with Charlie. And it was Charlie's idea. Charlie came to Dad, said, "Dad, let's play. Let's get in that thing. We can win that. Come on, let's do that." And so, Tiger's pretty private guy, especially with his kids. He doesn't really want them in the spotlight. And so he gave this a lot of consideration. And so Justin Thomas was talking about this. And it seems that Charlie likes to talk a little trash. Kind of like Tiger a little bit. And he's always trying to beat Justin Thomas at anything they're doing, right? Evidently, they go back and forth quite a bit. And he just loves to compete, and he wants to get under Justin Thomas's skin. So according to Justin, it was Charlie's idea to enter the PNC. And Tiger gave it a lot of consideration. And he said he and Tiger talked about it quite a bit, actually. The pros and the cons and what ifs and whatnot. So, Kieran, this certainly does continue to show a different side of Woods, who for years has been very measured with the press, especially on matters dealing with his kids. So will you be watching when Tiger and his son Charlie tee it up with the other major champs and their family members December 17th through the 20th?
Well, I think normally I would not watch this event, but I think this year I think it's a must watch because we want to see, obviously how Charlie plays, but then how they are together and how that dynamic works. It could be an awful lot of fun. And as you say, I think Tiger has opened up in more recent years, and he has changed his image and been more accessible. He's clearly, even the players on tour talk about that, how he's much more engaging and amiable and just more accessible. And I think he's given that little bit of insight to the public as well, but on his terms. And I think this is very much on his and Charlie's terms. And I think it's a great thing for them. Clearly, the boy he's got a bit of personality about him. That seems pretty clear. But he's obviously also a fantastic junior golfer. You look at the scores that he shoots, and he wins all these events by 10, 15 shots. So he clearly loves the game and he's very good at it. So it'll be fun to watch them play together. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. And again, seeing Tiger, a different side of Tiger. I remember when he had his kids at the par 3 contest at the Masters a few years ago now. That was a big deal. Obviously, the kids are older, so maybe he feels more comfortable with it. And no one can criticize him for trying to protect his children. I mean, that's absolutely what anyone should and would do. But it'll be fun for us to see him play, and hopefully it'll be fun for them too. So I'm looking forward to watching this. And you mentioned some of the other guys that are in the field, obviously major champions all across the board. I think Tiger and Charlie. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, I think they'll be quite hard to beat. Though, of course, Justin Thomas is in there with his own father, who, as we all know, is a golf professional as well and can certainly play. So it might actually end up coming down to Woods versus Thomas on that final round. And we'll see how Charlie's competitive juices go at that point. And it might get very intense. You never know. But it should be fun.
That could be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps up the Par 5 news for tonight. A lot of good stuff in there. Really enjoyed talking about those news items. So let's move right on here. We got the practice range section. We don't have a BIG, a very important guest for tonight. We're going to spend our time talking about the U.S. Women's Open coming up this weekend. And Kieran, this is a $5.5 million purse. The winner is going to get a big check. And even if you finish inside the top 10, you're probably going to get a check bigger than what you would normally get winning one of the regular tour events, especially bigger than the ladies' European Tour events for sure. We do have a bit of an issue with the TV coverage, though. I don't know if you looked at this or not, but of course, we have this little thing called football. I know you have football there, but this is the real football here.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yes.
With helmets and shoulder pads and all that kind of stuff. And so they tend to hog up the airtime on the weekends here, and well, pretty much any other time too now. So like TV coverage is all over the board, right? So there's practice rounds or Wednesday and Thursday and all that stuff. But beginning with the first round on Thursday, it's on Peacock, whatever that is, for a couple hours, 10:30 to 12:30. And then it goes over to Golf Channel from 12:30 to 6. So you've got that. And so we're doing this on NBC now. We're not doing it on Fox. Remember, NBC bought out the contract. And so then on Friday, same kind of deal. They're starting off from 1 to 3 on Peacock. Then they're going from 3 to 6 on the Golf Channel. Now, so there's still Peacock on Saturday for a while, 1 to 2:30. You got early coverage, 11 to 1 on the Golf Channel, then Peacock. Then you go to NBC. Then finally on Sunday, you go 11 to 2 on the Golf Channel and then 2 to 5 on NBC. But it's all over the board. It's a couple hours here, a couple hours there. So check your TV and your listings to find it. Make sure you got it taping if you're not going to be right there. December the 10th certainly is a unique time of the year for a major championship with the holiday rush for major hardware. And we're seeing several of the top names playing quite well coming into this, though, Kieran. Let's talk a little bit about the golf course. You got the Champions Club, founded by two of golf's greats, Jackie Burke and Jimmy DeMerit, who Burke won a Masters and a PGA. Demerit was the first man to win 3 Masters championships. You've got the course is played host to a Ryder Cup, a U.S. Open, PGA Tour championships, U.S. Amateur, just all kinds of stuff has gone on there. It's a great golf course. Jackie Burke runs it with a firm fist, much like Augusta National is run. There's no messing around. It's all golf there, nothing else. It's just a golf club. So I don't know, Kieran. I'm going to stop right there. Kind of turn it over to you. Any thoughts, initial thoughts you got coming into the U.S. Women's Open this week?
Yeah, well, obviously there's 2 very unique characteristics of this event, and one of them, of course, as you mentioned, is playing in December. I mean, that's incredible, really. Usually played, of course, in the summer, and that's been its long time, stage in the US Women's Open. So this will be very different playing it in this time of year. But on top of that, you have the fact that we're at the Champions Club, but obviously we have challenges in trying to get this big field round in the limited daylight, around 10 hours or so of daylight at this time of year. So to do that, they're playing it across 2 golf courses at Champions Club. You have Cypress Creek, which is a golf course where they've hosted so many great events in the past. You mentioned there, Fred, from US Opens, or Orville Moody was the Great Shock US Open winner back in '69 at the Champions Club in Houston. A Ryder Cup was here back in '67. Jody Mudd, David Duval, Tiger Woods, Mike Weir, Chad Campbell, they all won the Tour Championship here. And also the likes of Arnold Palmer, Ben Crenshaw, and Roberto Di Vincenzo, they've all won events here, professional and amateur, through the decade. So, but playing it across the 2 golf courses, the Cypress Creek course, the main course, that will host 3 rounds. But also 1 round we played at the Jack Rabbit course, which is the second course at the Champions Club. So that's very unique for a major championship to be played across 2 golf courses. So that will be an interesting dynamic to see how that plays out and what differences there are in terms of the scoring and who has an advantage from one day to the next. So we'll see that play out on the first 2 days. Then, of course, they play the last couple of rounds on the main Cypress Creek course. So, yeah, it's an interesting setup for an event, given those characteristics. And you mentioned, obviously, the players who established this venue. Jimmy Demerit, who was one of the game's most colourful characters. And I would urge anyone to go on to the Getty Image website and just look up Jimmy Demerit from back in the day. Guy had a very interesting dress sense and sense of style. I mean, he clearly enjoyed himself. And obviously was a wonderful player as well. And Jack Burke Jr., who was the 1956 Masters champ. I believe that was the first Masters actually televised in the United States. Very small amount of coverage, but I think that was actually the first time they had the event on CBS. And he won that year when he beat Ken Venturi, who was an amateur and who just fell apart in the last round in tough conditions, and Burke came through and won. He was the son of a golf pro, and he remains, Jack Burke, at 97 years of age, he is golf's oldest living major champion. And as you touched on there, Fred, he remains very active for his age. I mean, he's still out and about, he's still practicing, he still hits balls, and he still holds court at the Champions Club, and he'll be a presence, I'm sure, during the US Women's Open. So, yeah, Fred, it's going to be an interesting week in December, a great venue, but across 2 golf courses. So there's a lot of peculiarities here. But as you touched on, a lot of the big name favourites are coming into this week in some very good form and looking to claim the last major of this year.
Yeah, and speaking along that line, who's in the tournament? Normally you'd have all these qualifiers across the country, but like we saw with the U.S. Men's Open, they had to just put up some criteria and said, okay, here's who we're going to invite. But in this event this week, you've got 9 past champions of the U.S. Women's Open. You've got all 14 of the LPGA Tour winners from this past year. Plus, you've got 7 rookies in the field. Esther Henseleit, Nuria Torres, Yui Kawamoto, Andrea Lee, Yolalimi Noah, Bianca Padagaganan, and Patty Tavatanikit.
Well done.
I got through them.
Congratulations. That was impressive.
Yeah. Kieran, I'm interested, and interested in watching Nuria Torres, who's played very well in Europe. but has not performed that well here in America yet. She's coming off a very strong finish at the end of the Ladies European Tour season, and I feel she's really on the cusp of really doing great things. I played with her, and I really like her game a lot. Also, Emily K. Pedersen, who had that amazing 4-event finish on the Ladies European Tour over last month. Can Pedersen remain that cool, calm, killer instinct that served her so well on the Ladies European Tour and carry that over to the U.S. Women's Open? So let's talk about the favorites a little bit here, Kieran. And so we're going to talk about kind of the top 10 in the world right now. The defending champion, Zhongyun Lee, 6, hasn't played much in the United States. She does have 2 runners-up and a 3rd in Korea this year. And since coming to America, she was 42nd at the Pelican and 16th at the Volunteers of America last week. You got Jin Young Ko, who's still #1 in the world. She's trending up. She had 4 top 10s in Korea, finally came to the U.S. for the Pelican, finished 35th, and then was 4th last week. So she's trending up. Then you got Se-Young Kim. And these are just the Koreans. I'm starting off with the Koreans here, okay? So you got Se-Young Kim, who's probably the #1 player right now, but just because the way they're doing the rankings right now isn't allowed to jump up there. She's got 2 wins. One of those was a major, 8 top 10s, back-to-back wins, the KPMG and the Pelican. Definitely the best player right now and has to be probably the favorite going in. You got Inbee Park, who just seems to be the ageless one. She won clear back in January in Australia. She's added 5 top 10 since, plus she's coming off consecutive runner-ups in her last 2 starts. She's trending in the right direction. Plus, this is a tough golf course. So that puts an emphasis on putting, and she's the best putter in the LPGA Tour, so you cannot count her out. Then you got Minjee Lee, who's #8 in the Rolex rankings, played well at the beginning of the year at the restart, 3rd at the Inverness and 4th at the Marathon. She was 3rd at the Women's Open and 7th at the ANA. She won in Dubai on the Ladies European Tour, was 15th and 19th in the last 2 events here in America. But she's always a threat on really good golf courses. So, and then you got So-Young Yoo. She's got a win, a T5, and a runner-up in Korea. Was runner-up last week at the Volunteers of America. So that was just her first event in the United States this year. So she has to be a solid favorite behind So-Young Kim as well. Well, then you got Americans. So I'm not going to go into detail on these. I'm going to let you talk here for a minute, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about Daniel Kang. I'm going to talk about Allie McDonald-Ewing. I'm going to talk about Nelly Korda, Jessica, Lexi. I mean, we got the Stacey Lewis. So we got some American women that could be in this thing as well, Kieran.
Yeah, very much so. We can talk about those 2. Actually, I think one that's a real standout there actually is Stacey Lewis, who she grew up in Houston. I know she was born in Ohio, Fred, but she did grow up in Houston, and she loved to
very familiar with this golf course. Yeah.
Yeah, so she would love to get a victory, where she grew up, and very possible. We saw her win obviously earlier in the year, and in Scotland, and it was a magnificent win for her. Rolled back the years, has won major championships in the past, and there's no reason why she can't compete and do well on a tough venue like this one is. Likewise, indeed, Angela Stanford. But you mentioned some of the top Americans there. Obviously, Danielle Kang, who had a fantastic bit of form after the restart in the summer, coming back and winning a couple of events. She's someone who were waiting for her to come out and claim her second major. She won the PGA 3 years ago. US Women's Open would be the next step, and certainly very capable of it. Lexi Thompson is an interesting one, Fred, because she has a new caddy on the bag this week, and her caddy is Bryson DeChambeau's regular caddy, Tim Tucker. So Tim Tucker is going for a remarkable double, potentially, to win the men's and the US Women's Open in the same year. And it's fair to say that has never happened before. So Lexi maybe isn't among the big favourites this year, but she has obviously a caddy with some winning form by her side. And you never know, that could be an intriguing dynamic to follow. Could Tim Tucker be the magic ingredient to get Lexi back to her best and maybe indeed win a US Open and claim a unique double for the caddy? So that's a storyline there to look out for. But just delving back to the other favourites, Fred, you mentioned obviously all the Korean players. I think they're going to be very hard to beat here. Also, Sei Young Kim, you touched on, we spoke about her 2 weeks ago. Unbelievable form. I mean, just every performance stat, she's at the top. She's just playing the best golf in the women's game this year, unquestionably, certainly the LPGA Tour, and that makes her unquestionably the favourite, obviously having won the women's PGA. But I do really like Inbee Park. She's playing some great golf, and I do really think she has one major at least left in her. She has 7, and amazingly, the last was 5 years ago, which is astonishing, really. And I think there's a very good chance she could make it 8, and it could be this week. I think she's still playing at such a high level, as you said, an amazing touch on the greens. And it's fair to say she knows how to win. So, and certainly in big events, she's a 3-time winner of this event. So, could she make it 4? Quite possibly. But Yin Young Ko, very limited play, obviously in the US. But as you touched on, Fred, she had that great finish at the weekend there, and certainly can't be discounted. Going back a year ago, we were talking about her as being the best player in the world and amazing stats and achieving so much. Obviously, this year's kind of disrupted that a little bit, but she could certainly be a contender this week. And So Young Yu as well. I mean, first event back in America, our first LPGA Tour event anywhere since February, at the weekend there, finishing 2nd. She won the US Women's Open way back in 2011. And she has the most fabulous record in majors.
Up at Whistling Straits, but at Black Wolf Run, actually.
At Black Wolf Run, yeah. Yep. And has a fabulous record in majors. 2 wins, 4 runners-up, 4 third places, 19 top 10s. I mean, she is a perennial contender. And after 2nd place here, I would certainly put her in my leading contenders. But one name, Fred, I'm going to throw out, there's a little bit of a wild card, is Carlota Ciganda.
Wow.
And Annika was the last European winner of the US Open in 2006. But Ciganda is playing extremely well the last few weeks. A lot of good finishes in there. And according to the wonderful stat guy on Twitter, Justin Ray, who sets the standard for golf stats in the game, he works for the 15th Club now, formerly of Golf Channel. He said earlier today that Ciganda leads the strokes gain stats in the US Women's Open for the last 3 years. So She really enjoys the USGA setups and is certainly playing well enough to be a contender. So I think those are the standouts, Fred, and I'll turn it back to you so you can talk about some of your compatriots from the US.
Well, you mentioned Danielle Kang winning twice at the restart, but she really hasn't done a lot since then.
Yeah.
She was runner-up to Allie McDonald in October at Reynolds. Speaking of Allie McDonald, who's now Allie Ewing, she's number 10 on the LPGA Tour money list now. She got married back in May, but just changed her official LPGA Tour name to Ewing, effective at the Volunteers of America last week. She's playing with a ton of confidence after her win in Georgia. Could she be a factor? We got to talk about the Cordas, right? Nelly finished 3rd, 2nd, 5th before the WD at the KPMG and hasn't played since. Probably a little rusty there. Jessica's been battling injury, has fallen to number 26 in the Rolex rankings. The last 2 starts was a 5th at the Pelican and 19th last week at the VOA. Lexi, I just think she's got too many things going on to be bothered with practicing and playing golf right now. Her best finish this year was 4th at the ANA. She did have a T13 at the ShopRite, and her last 3 events have been a 30th, a 24th, and a 27th. I just think she's too busy with other business interests right now to concentrate on her golf. I like Stacy here, Stacy Lewis in Houston. That is her home. She knows the course very well. She won in Scotland just not that long ago. She has won top 10 since. She was 5th at the ANA. She plays very difficult golf courses very well. So this could very well work out for her. You got Austin Ernst also, who's number 5 on the money list. She won the Walmart and 4th at the Pelican. So I don't know if I see her really as a factor this week, but could be top 10 maybe. And then you mentioned Anna Stanford coming off the win last week. Another Texas native, could be a good week. She's on a roll. My top Canadian for the week, Brooke Henderson. Who else? Runner-up at the A&E, 3 consecutive 6th-place finishes coming in here. So she's playing very well. A couple English ladies. Charlie Hall 4 top tens in her last 5 starts. Started out really hot at the Volunteers of America last week, but faded to a 6th place finish. Always aggressive, probably a little too aggressive for a USGA setup. And then Georgia Hall, whose game is made for major championships, made for USGA setups. I like her a lot. She won at Portland. She's had 2 top tens on the Ladies European Tour since. And then somebody that's just kind of a little sentimental favorite, Sophia Popov. She did so well at the Women's Open. She won. She went from 392nd in the world all the way up to 28th. And since her win at the Open, she hasn't missed a cut, but her best finish was a T15 at the Pelican. But she's making cuts and playing with a lot of confidence. What youngsters? I got a couple names for you. Jennifer Kupcho. She's had a really solid rookie year on tour. She could be a factor here. She has that kind of the game for a USGA setup. We saw her do so well at the Masters, or at the at ANWA, the Augusta National Women's Amateur. And if you can play well on that golf course, you can play well anywhere. Then you've got Yelimi Noah, Bianca Patagaganan. They've been playing very well. They may be watching this week. I doubt if they're going to be a major factor, but you got to love the way that Bianca drives the golf ball, right? She hits it out of sight. So I got a dark horse name for you before I turn it back to you, Kieran.
Okay.
Maybe not so much of a dark horse, but Lydia Ko has been ranked in the 30s most of this year, currently at number 40 in the Rolex ranking. Runner-up at the marathon, 6th at the ANA, 3 top tens in her last 3 starts. I've said it before, Highland Meadows, where they play the Marathon Classic, is a great track. And winners there also win majors, like the U.S. Women's Open. Lydia has won there twice, should have won it this year, except for kind of a little blow up there on the last hole.
Yeah.
So I like Lydia Ko as the dark horse. She's been trending really, really good over the last 3 or 4 months. So one other thing, Christy Kerr, I don't know still the word. I didn't get the word today was she's going to tee it up. She had a cart accident last week, had to withdraw from the Volunteers of America. Something about the cart wrecked, and she and her caddy ended up in the hospital overnight and that kind of thing. So not sure if she's going to play. So back to you, Kieran. Let you talk for a little bit.
Yes, well, I love your pick of Georgia Hall and indeed Lydia Ko. I think the game would be better with Lydia Ko back up there contending, because she's such a fascinating personality and just so speaks so eloquently, and I think just enhances the game, and is such at her best is a terrific player to watch, and has played some fantastic stuff this year at times. You mentioned Christy Kerr there, Fred, and I checked before we came on the air, and she is still in the field at present. She has been paired up with Brittany Lincecum and Jarena Pillar, and they're playing the Jack Rabbit course on Thursday. So she's still in the field as it stands. So we expect her to play, obviously coming off a serious incident and probably not going to be feeling at her best, but she is still in the field as it stands.
Beware of the injured golfer.
Well, that's what they say. That's one of those famous old adages. That's, you know, I'm not too sure what the injuries were for Christy Kerr, but she's certainly coming in here on a fascinating story if she was to get into contention. Obviously, a previous winner of this event, so she's certainly capable of doing some great things on her day. Maybe our best days are behind her, but you can find that magic in the bottle. Just look at Angela Stanford last week, so anything is certainly possible. But looking at other players in the field quickly, Fred, I mean, I would love to mention as a youngster who could do really well here is Nasa Hitoka, who's amazingly only 21. We forget that because she's been so consistent for the past 2 or 3 years on the tour. She finished 3rd at the Women's PGA. I think she's a great record in majors from Japan, and she could be the first Japanese winner of the US Women's Open, so that would be a unique achievement for her to try and accomplish. And I think also Anna Nordqvist, who played very well at times last week, was in the mix. In obviously tough conditions, a major champion who plays difficult conditions and difficult courses quite well. She could do quite solidly this week. Maybe not win, but I think she could certainly be in that top 10 or so. And also, I think the wild card, what I'm intrigued to see what she can do is ultimately Emily Pedersen, who has, as you said, an astonishing end of the year on the LET, just an unbelievable form, winning 4 times and matter of weeks, and it'll be fascinating to see her coming back to the US, where she doesn't have a great record. In her career, despite being young, her career has almost had two chapters. It was kind of before she played the Solheim Cup in 2017, and after that. Before it, she was on the rise. Solheim Cup didn't go very well for her at all, and that left an impression on her negatively, and she struggled after that point. So doesn't have a great record in US soil, but she is rejuvenated, reborn almost, and is playing the golf of her life. Obviously, this is a big step up from the LET, but you never know. She's playing very well and certainly not lacking in confidence. So I'm intrigued to see what she can do this week, if she can carry that form into a grander stage. But I think bottom line is, Fred, I mean, so many of these players are coming in here in really good form, and it's very hard to pick a winner. So it makes for what's a really, really interesting major championship.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I don't, we've talked about a couple of majors where a lot of guys are really on a roll, playing well coming in for the men. But there's a lot of the top names that are really playing well in the women's game right now. Yeah. So, and that's part of my wrap up, actually. The big names have been building up to this week for the last month. They've been pointing to that. This could be the best women's event of the year. I expect the Koreans to be at the top of their game, and someone like Stacey Lewis could be a real factor this week. Should be outstanding golf. I can't wait to watch it. If I can figure out when to get the DV set for, I'll have to figure out what Peacock is, but I'm not sure about all that. So that's our coverage of the U.S. Women's Open coming up this weekend. We can't wait to watch it. Moving on into our final putts and wrapping up the show tonight, Kieran, got just a couple things. Both the PGA Tour and the USGA did a little reshuffling on personnel in the last week. Longtime golf official Slugger White and Mark Russell are both retiring, along with Dillard Pruitt. Not much is going to change. Excuse me, I'm sorry. At the top spots of the two major golf organizations, other than looking for Mike Davis's replacement at the USGA before the end of next year. Kieran, Michael Jordan's new golf course in Florida, the Grove, delivers drinks via a drone rather than a sexy cart girl. Are you good with that?
I'll accept anything, so yes.
The tradition, no cargo. I don't know if I can live with that. I'm an old guy. I like tradition.
But Fred, this is 2020 though, so it's all modern, and you can't have cart girls anymore. It's not very politically correct.
Then I'm going to quit golfing. I'm going to give it up. Don't forget, next week, Kieran is going to be back to join Carlos and I to wrap up the 2020 season with our top 10 stories of the year. You got to get those into Carlos, Kieran. Don't forget to do that. It's always a blockbuster. You certainly don't want to miss it. We just can't imagine what the top story is going to be. We'll have to wait and find out. The December issue of the Michigan Golf Journal came out on Sunday. The Ohio Golf Journal should be published this week. And we have a ton of great videos on Back Nine Report TV, on Roku, and on YouTube. Hope everyone has a chance to check it out. Kieran, thanks a lot for being with us tonight. We really appreciate it, buddy.
My pleasure.
So until next week, big year-end wrap-up show. Everybody stay safe, stay happy, and we'll see you on the Back Nine.
Until next time.